Hello. Come in and find a comfortable place to rest. Let the sound of the rain wash away the day. Tonight, I have a story for you. It's a tale about a quiet village, a gentle clockmaker, and a special timepiece that chimed with forgotten memories. If this story brings you a little peace, I hope you'll join me again for more tales. For now, just close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let's journey together to a place where the rain always falls softly, in a little fold of the world. Tucked away between rolling green hills that sigh with mist, lies the village of Lundenwick. It's a place where time seems to flow differently, more like a slow, meandering river than a rushing stream. In Lundenwick, it's almost always raining. Not an angry, stormy rain, but a gentle, persistent drizzle that kisses the cobblestones, mists the ancient slate roofs, and hangs like a soft veil over the nearby woods. That sound is the village's constant lullaby, a soft beat on window panes, a steady whisper through the leaves of the great oak in the town square. The rain polishes the stones of the low bridge crossing the river Lune, giving them a deep, pewter gleam. It drips from the eaves of crooked, half-timbered houses, tracing paths down whitewashed walls and dark, sturdy oak. It collects in the petals of roses and hydrangeas that spill over garden walls, each droplet a tiny world, reflecting the soft, gray light. The air in Lundenwick perpetually smells of damp earth, of wet stone, and of that sweet, clean scent that follows a summer shower, even in the heart of winter. The light here is always gentle, filtered through a permanent canopy of cloud, lending the village a dreamy, watercolor quality. Street lamps lit since early afternoon cast pools of warm, honeyed gold onto the wet streets. Their glow, a soft and inviting promise of shelter. In this quiet, sleepy village lives a man named Elias. Elias is the clockmaker. His shop is nestled between the old bakery, where the comforting scent of warm bread used to escape, and a small bookshop with a faded green door. Elias's own shop is a place of quiet wonder. Its sin, a carved wooden clock face with hands set peacefully to 10 past 10, swings with a soft melodic creak in the breeze. Elias himself is much like the village he calls home, quiet, gentle, and moving at his own unhurried pace. He's a man of patient hands and a calm heart. His hair has hints of silver at the temples, like frost on an autumn morning, and his warm chestnut eyes hold a deep, thoughtful light. He wears simple things, soft woolen jumpers, comfortable trousers, and a worn leather apron at his workbench. His movements are deliberate and graceful, from a lifetime spent with tiny, delicate things. To watch him work is like watching a meditation. He can spend hours with a magnifying glass to his eye, his breathing slow and steady, as he coaxes a minuscule gear back into place or polishes a sliver of brass until it shines. His workshop is a sanctuary of gentle sounds, the soft, rhythmic ticking of dozens of clocks, each with its own voice and tempo, fills the air. It's a sound so constant that Elias barely notices it, yet its absence would feel like a profound silence. The air inside smells of clean machine oil, aged wood, and the faint metallic temps of brass and silver. Light from a large window falls on his workbench, illuminating the intricate landscapes of cogs and springs he navigates each day. The rest of the shop is a warm, welcoming gloom, filled with the tall shapes of grandfather clocks, standing like patient sentinels. For Elias, this wasn't just a shop, it was his world. He found a deep peace in the logic and order of his craft, in the puzzle of a broken timepiece, and the satisfaction of restoring its heartbeat. He lived alone, but he wasn't lonely. The clocks were his companions, and the gentle rain was his constant friend. One Tuesday, as the rain drummed a soft and soothing rhythm on the roof, a delivery arrived. This wasn't unusual. Elias often received broken clocks from neighboring towns, but this delivery was different. It was a large, heavy crate, brought by a cartman whose coat was slick with rain. It was from an estate sale, the man explained, from a grand old house on the moors that had stood empty for a generation. The auctioneer, knowing of Ilias's peculiar craft, had sent this one item his way. With a nod of thanks, Ilias guided the crate into his workshop. For a while, he simply let it sit, content to listen to the rain and the ticking of his many companions. There was no rush. In Lundenwick and in Ilias's world, things were done when the time felt right. As dusk began to settle, blurring the world outside into a soft palette of grays and blues, he finally approached the crate. With a small crowbar, he gently pried the lid open. The sound of nails pulling from old wood was a sharp complaint in the quiet room. Inside, nestled in yellowed straw that smelled of dust and time, lay a clock. It was a large mantel clock, crafted from a wood so dark it seemed to drink the light. It wasn't ornate or gilded. Its beauty was in its simplicity and age. The wood was smooth and cool to the touch. The face wasn't brass or enamel, but a disc of polished slate, with Roman numerals etched by a masterful hand. But it was the glass door covering the face that held Ilias's attention. Etched into the glass wasn't a floral pattern, but a faint, intricate drawing of a single, sprawling oak tree. It was the great oak from Lundenwick's own town square. Elias felt a strange reverence as he lifted the heavy clock and placed it on his workbench. It was silent. Its pendulum hung motionless. Its hands were frozen at 3:15. It was a clock whose heart had ceased to beat. Yet, as Ilias's fingers traced the outline of the etched tree, he felt a peculiar warmth, a faint vibration, as if the clock held a deep, sleeping energy. He knew, with an instinct beyond his mechanical knowledge, that this was no ordinary timepiece. This clock hadn't just been made in Lundenwick. It felt as though it had grown from the very soul of the village. He resolved to take his time with this one. He wouldn't just mend it. He would get to know it. He would listen to what it had to say. For several days, Elias didn't even open the clock's casing. He simply cleaned it. With a soft cloth and a solution of beeswax and lavender oil, he polished the dark wood in slow, patient circles. As he worked, the deep, complex grain emerged, like a secret map. He polished the silver hands until they shone with a soft, lunar light. He cleaned the glass, making the etched tree stand out in beautiful relief. He did all this in the quiet hours of the late afternoon, with the rain for company, allowing himself to become attuned to the clock's silent presence. It felt like he was tending to a person, not an object. Finally, the day came to look inside. Using a small, skeleton key that came with the clock, he unlocked the back panel. The inner world of the clock was a labyrinth of brass and steel, a miniature city of gears and springs. It was dusty and thick with the coagulated oil of decades past, but Elias could see at once it was a work of genius. The craftsmanship was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and at its heart was the source of its silence. The mainspring was snapped. Replacing a mainspring was a delicate but familiar task for Elias. He spent the better part of a day meticulously disassembling the mechanism, cleaning each individual cog and wheel. He found a suitable replacement spring in his collection, a strong ribbon of tempered steel. Then, piece by tiny piece, he began to reassemble the clock's core dot. As he fitted the final gear, he gently set the pendulum in motion. It began to swing in a slow, hypnotic arc. And then, for the first time in perhaps 50 years, a sound emerged. It wasn't the familiar, sharp tick-tock he expected. It was a softer sound, a deep, resonant thrum, almost like a quiet heartbeat. Thrum, thrum, thrum. The silver hands began to glide over the slate face. Elias watched, mesmerized, as the minute hand approached the 12. He braced for the chime. He expected a bell. What came was something else entirely. It wasn't just a sound, but a feeling. A wave of sensation washed over him, the scent of wood smoke and roasted chestnuts, the sound of distant music, the soft gasp of a crowd. And with it came an image, a memory, but not his own. He saw the village square, long ago, lit by hundreds of paper lanterns. He felt an overwhelming sense of peace and community. The vision lasted only a moment, leaving behind the gentle thrum of the clock and the lingering scent of phantom wood smoke. Elias sat back, his heart beating a little faster. The clock hadn't chimed the hour. It had chimed a memory, forgotten memory, of the village's old lantern festival. He looked at the clock with a new sense of awe. It wasn't just a keeper of time, but a keeper of stories. Each part he repaired seemed to unlock another layer of its past. When he realigned the chime mechanism, the air in the workshop suddenly filled with the rich, warm, impossible smell of cinnamon and sweet bread. It was the smell of the Lundenwick buns from the bakery that had stood next door for over 100 years before closing down 2 decades ago. The memory came with the feeling of warmth from the bakery's ovens and the image of the baker, Mrs. Gable, her smile as warm as the bread she sold. He remembered, as a small boy, being given a warm bun, its heat seeping into his cold fingers. The memory was so comforting, it sparked a gentle impulse. That evening, he went into his small kitchen and found a recipe for cinnamon buns. His hands, so adept with tiny clockwork, were clumsy with the soft dough. But hours later, a batch of wonderfully fragrant buns sat cooling on his counter. The next morning, he wrapped 3 of them in wax paper and knocked on the faded green door of the bookshop next door. It was opened by Mr. Abernathy. The elderly owner, Elias, had only ever nodded to. I did some baking, Elias said, feeling uncharacteristically shy. I made too many. Mr. Abernathy's face broke into a slow, genuine smile. Elias, he said, that is remarkably kind. They smell just like Mrs. Gable's used to. As Elias walked back to his shop, the memory clock had gently nudged him into a small, warm act of connection. A few days later, he was polishing the clock's heavy pendulum, noticing a series of faint scratches on its back. As he worked, a new sound bloomed in the silence, the unmistakable echo of children's laughter. He saw an image of the old stone bridge and 2 children, a boy and a girl. He recognized the boy with a jolt. It was himself. And the girl was Lily, his childhood friend, whose family had moved away when they were young. He remembered them standing on that bridge, scratching their initials onto a flat stone and promising to be friends forever before tossing it into the river. The memory faded. He turned the pendulum over in his hand. The scratches weren't random. Faintly, he could make out 2 letters, intertwined, an E and an L. It wasn't the stone from the river, of course, but it took his breath away. The clock was showing him his own forgotten history. That afternoon, he closed the shop an hour early and walked out into the rain, to the old stone bridge. He stood where he and Lily had stood, his adult hands on the same damp stones. The rain fell on his face, mingling with the wetness from his own eyes. He wasn't sad. He felt connected to the boy he had been, his own small story being woven back into the fabric of his home. The clock was now almost fully restored. Its deep, resonant thrum had become a comforting presence, a steady pulse that seemed to match Ilias's own heartbeat. The only part left was the very center, where the elegant silver hands were mounted. This was the most perilous part. A slip of the hand could bend the slender silver forever. He waited for a quiet evening, when the only sounds were the rain and the breathing of the clocks. Taking a deep, calming breath, he brought his finest tools to the slate face and gently eased the minute hand free. Then, the hour hand. As the second hand lifted away, the final memory bloomed. This one was different. It had no sound, no scent. This memory was pure feeling. It was a wave of warmth and love, so profound it made Elias gasp. It was the feeling of a large, calloused hand resting gently on his shoulder. It was a feeling of immense pride, of quiet understanding, of a love that didn't need words. In his mind, he was a boy again, standing right here, at this workbench, which had belonged to his father. He was struggling with his first real repair, his frustration mounting. And then, he felt that hand on his shoulder. His father hadn't spoken. He had simply stood behind him, his presence a silent anchor of support. He had gently guided his son's hands, showing him the angle, the patience required. It was the moment he had truly become a clockmaker. The moment the craft had passed from his father's hands to his. He had buried that memory under years of quiet routine, under the grief of his father's passing. He'd forgotten the heart of it all. The wave of feeling receded, leaving Elias with a profound sense of peace. He looked at his own hands, steady and capable. They were his father's hands, and they were his own. With a newfound reverence, he gently pushed the silver hands back onto their posts. The clock was whole. Its thrum continued, but now, as it struck the hour, there was a new sound. A single, clear, beautiful chime rang out, a pure note that hung in the air. The clock had done its work. It had reminded Elias of who he was. The change in Elias wasn't dramatic. To the villagers, he was still the quiet, gentle clockmaker. But something inside him had shifted. His quietness was no longer a retreat, but a peaceful state of being. His solitude was now a choice, punctuated by small moments of connection. He shared a weekly cup of tea with Mr. Abernathy in the dusty bookshop. He learned to bake a few more things, sometimes leaving a small cake on a neighbor's doorstep. He started taking a walk every evening, rain or not, down to the old stone bridge, not to dwell on the past, but to appreciate the steady flow of the river and the quiet beauty of his village. The memory clock sat in a place of honor on his mantelpiece. At home, it chimed the hours with its single, beautiful note, a gentle reminder of the harmony in his own life. The rain in Lundenwick still fell, a constant, soothing presence. But to Elias, it sounded different now. It wasn't the sound of isolation. It was the sound of nourishment, of life, of a world washed clean. It was the gentle rhythm of home. He had spent his life measuring time for others, and now, thanks to a forgotten clock filled with sleeping stories, he had finally learned to live in it himself, feeling the beautiful, simple, and profound ticking of his own contented heart. And so, Elias the clockmaker found his peace, not in turning back time, but in allowing its forgotten whispers to enrich his present. The rain continues to fall on the slate roofs of Lundenwick, a gentle, eternal lullaby for the village and everyone in it. May your own heart find its gentle rhythm, and may your dreams be filled with quiet, peaceful memories. As the story ends, just let yourself drift, carried on the soft sound of the falling rain. Sleep well. Good night.